Hey, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we'll be talking about Power Rangers Legacy in Space Black Space Ranger from Space Bandai Space. Let's go ahead and get this figure free from its plastic prison, take a look and see what we think about the Black Space Ranger. And here is the Black Space Ranger completely out of the box. Now, before we get started, just want to preface that I'm not entirely sure how people normally refer to this figure, the in-space figures, if it's the Black Space Ranger, if it's the Black in-space Ranger, or if it's the in-space Black Ranger. That's, I don't know, it's just so easy to call it any of those variations that I can't really pick which one I prefer. So, regardless, let's get back to the figure. So this figure is based off the Black Ranger from Power Rangers in Space, which was the 6th season of the American Power Rangers, which is also based off of the 21st season of the Japanese Super Sentai series, Denji Sentai Megaranger. Now, In Space was the Power Ranger series or season that I actually fell off of as a kid whenever I was watching it, like as they were coming out, and just mostly due to just growing up and finding other things to do, and nothing really in particular to the show, just that I was kind of getting out of that age group that was watching it regularly. However, I did recently go back and watch all of Megaranger, and I really liked Megaranger. In fact, I like a lot of the Super Sentai series. They're really good, and if you haven't seen them, you need to go see them because they're a lot of fun, especially the ones that have corresponding Power Ranger versions. The only accessories that come with the in-space Mega Rangers are their Mega Snipers, and, well, their holsters as well. They plug into the right side of their belts, and my experience with these have been that they are a pain in the ass. Even if I just think about moving the figure just slightly, the Mega Sniper will jump out of the holster and fly across the room, and I will be playing hide and seek with it for about an hour until I get it. Unlike the Zoo Rangers accessory, I forget what it's called. It's probably called a Dino something or other, but it's their blaster kind of dagger accessory. Those fit pretty snug, and I didn't have as much problem with those, but these, pain in the ass. I'll talk more about that later. The other thing I almost forgot to mention, all the Mega Rangers in this line come with pieces to build the Astro Megazord, and that's what's really cool about this line of figures from Bandai America, is that they've gotten into the build-a-figure kind of world with that Marvel Legends and DC have been involved with for quite a while. And it's a really cool idea that you build the Megazord, and it's like a little 6-inch, 7-inch figure of a Megazord, and I don't know, it's a nice incentive. Now, the Black Ranger specifically comes with the left arm piece, and I'll post a picture of the fully constructed Megazord at the end of the review. Now, these figures are about 6.5 inches tall, and unfortunately that half-inch might be a deal breaker for some people hoping to incorporate these Rangers into some of their other figure collections, and I don't know, I can go either way on it. It's really hard for me to tell, but let's go ahead and take a look at how they measure up with some other figures that we all might have in our collection. Alright, so starting off with the Red Space Ranger that was previously released in the line, and the Blue Ranger that is in the same wave with this figure. Here he is again with the Blue Space Ranger, and now with the Yellow Space Ranger that was released previously in the line. Here he is with the whole team of in-space Rangers or Mega Rangers, whichever one you like, minus the Silver Ranger, of course, which I kind of hope they do give us at some point. Here he is with the Mighty Morphin Black Ranger from the same Legacy line of figures. Here he is with the Mighty Morphin Black and Blue Rangers from SH Figuarts. And here he is with the Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger from SH Figuarts, and you can definitely tell the size difference here. And for all those who like to mix it up a little bit with their lines, we have him here with the Marvel Select Lizard figure. Here he is with the Dazzler figure from Marvel Legends. Here he is with the Masters of the Universe Classics Merman. And here he is with Cyclops from Marvel Legends. And finally, for those wanting to sort of kind of recreate the crossover event that happened during Power Rangers in Space, where they actually met the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the Next Mutation series, here he is with the Playmates Classics Donatello figure. And finally, here he is with the SH Figuarts Raphael figure. There isn't a lot of detail in the sculpt of this figure. I mean, outside of the helmet, chest, and abs, and the belt, everything is pretty flat. But this is actually what I prefer when it comes to Power Rangers or Super Sentai figures. In the past, Bandai has made figures overly muscular, which is not how they appear on either of the shows, and has been like the thing that kept me away from buying these figures here in the States, which led me to jump all in on the SH Figuarts line of these figures, because they were exactly how they looked on the show, and it was just what I wanted all along. And so this is kind of like a hybrid of the two, where you do have a little bit of detail on the abs, so you see a little bit of muscles, but as far as the arms and the legs, it's pretty flat. It's muscular, but like not detailed muscular, and I like that a lot. In regards to the paint, I want to say that since a lot of these parts are cast in the color of the suit of the character, that there isn't a lot of room for paint problems. But I did see some problems while sifting through the figures on the pegs, mostly on the multicolored chest piece, and it was just sometimes it was a little sloppier than others, but for the most part they weren't that bad. And occasionally I might have seen a white smudge here or there, but nothing that really stood out. And I don't recall anything too major to complain about on the actual figures that I picked up. So you know, I mean, but also given the fact that the In-Space and Megaranger suits are fairly simple in design, so there's not a lot of room for error. But you do want to keep a lookout for the visors, though, because I did recall seeing a White Ranger that is in the same wave of figures. His visor, I got so excited because I was like, oh, I was looking for him. I couldn't find him or the Yellow Ranger for a while. And so I saw him at Walmart, and I picked him up, and I was like, yes. And then I looked at his visor, and there was like, it looked as if something had melted onto it or something. It just was like very, like, just, you couldn't ignore it. It was, and obviously that's why it was left on the pegs. But you might want to keep a lookout for that when you're inspecting these figures for paint. But overall, I didn't see a lot of problems with these. Okay, so let's take a look at the articulation you're going to get out of the Black Space Ranger. So let's start with his head. So up at the head, you can have him look up that far. He can look down that far. And he has a 360 rotation at his head, at his neck, I should say. Then moving on to his arms. His arms will go up that far. Go right back down. He does have a 360 rotation at the shoulder as well. And he has a bicep swivel that allows him to move at the bicep. He has a double jointed elbow. And he has a swivel at the, I guess, at the elbow still. And, or the forearm, I should say. Also, his wrist can articulate pretty well. So it's got a lot of range of motion for the wrist. Also, his wrist, it's got a rotation as well. And then moving on to his legs. Now he can kick out about that far or that high. He can kick back pretty good too. And then he's got a thigh swivel that allows for some rotation. And he's got double jointed knees. And he's got a pivot and a joint at the ankle, so you get a lot of motion out of the ankle, which is really cool. Oh, and he's got a thigh or a leg cut. I'm not sure what you call that. Calf cut maybe. But yeah, he can do that as well. Then for an ab crunch, he's got an ab crunch. Like, that's just it. So he can go back that far and go forward this far. And he does have a he can go 360 at the waist as well. And so there you go. There is the articulation for the Black in Space Ranger. Plain and simple, this figure does what it needs to do. It looks nice, has all the articulation you really could want without overdoing it, and is another figure that helps to fill out another team on our Super Sentai Power Rangers shelves. However, most of my gripes come from what this figure doesn't have, their specific weapon. I'm not sure why Bandai is not including the weapons with these figures. Now, I get it with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers figures because they can easily repaint them or like reissue them with the figures' weapons and stuff, and kind of like, you know, milk that series a little bit more, which is what they like to do, and that's fine and good. But unfortunately, the other series that do not really have much of a reason to be reissued suffer from this. And I guess the only thing that could like remedy this is if they released a weapons pack for these figures, but that seems very unlikely. And regardless of that, we're stuck with what we have, and that is a figure without its signature weapon. Now, in my opinion, I feel like the figure looks almost kind of seems naked without it. I mean, the Mega Sniper is cool and appreciated, but like I mentioned earlier, it gets easily unplugged and flies across the room, causing much frustration, especially when you're trying to photograph these figures. And speaking of that, I found trying to get this figure to stay in a pose very cumbersome. I mean, it could be due to having some slightly looser joints, but I don't know. I just couldn't really get any good poses out of them, as evident by some of these photos. But again, that could be my own fault. But either way, your mileage will vary with these figures. Now, regardless of all that, I do like this figure a lot. I don't like that it costs $20 here in the States, but given that SH Figuarts seems to have abandoned their Super Sentai Power Rangers lines, for me, this line of figures satisfies that Ranger itch, which sounds really weird, but yeah, it does what I want it to do, which gives me close to 6-inch action figures that are not super muscular and that I can have on my shelf to represent some of my favorite teams of this series. So having said that, if you like Super Sentai and Power Rangers, I highly recommend this figure. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching, and if you liked what you saw, hit that like button. And if you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button too while you're at it. And if you want to hear more from me for some reason, check out the links to my other podcast in the description below. Be sure to check back here tomorrow for more opening goodness right here on Easy Opens. Else time.